it was just beautiful. Liked it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, fine. It's okay.
Queen, how is Angel? How is she?
She's fine. I brought her once, but you were not there. I'll bring her again.
No, I want like exclusive quality.
We
Yes,
live.
yeah. She's. Hello, everyone. Good
It was just beautiful.
evening. Yes. Okay. So we are from Montfort Alumni Associate. Today I will be here hosting for this evening, and we are working on a project, Psychological Horizon, exploring with experts. So we have been working with different experts working from different psychological backgrounds or the field. And today we have got special educators with us. I'll introduce you, all of you, to them very soon. But before that, I would like to tell you something regarding this project that we have taken up. It's the aim of this program is to help students and the emerging professionals, those who would like to get connected to psychological background and understand and stay informed about the multitude of opportunities out there in the field of psychology and the mental health profession. And along with this, we are also looking into developing a realistic picture of things to experts and experiences, challenges, and all that comes in our day-to-day life and the activities that we do. And we hopefully expect that making all these psychological horizons, talking to the experts, will help us in making it an very informative a resource for all of us to benefit from the discussions that we will be having with our panelists. And before I introduce our special guest, I would like to introduce myself. This is the 13th week, and since a long way, we are here in 13th week, and I am here as your host, Queen Rajkoa, and I'm from Northeast Assam. And I have done my master's in counseling psychology, and I have an experience of working with children for 11 and plus years. And I'm working as a professional counselor from last 3 years, and it's still on. And at present, I'm working as a customer service coordinator and counselor for CRS, that is the Corporate Social Responsibility, under Assam Gas Company Limited, Duliajan. It is in Assam itself. So it's in government sector. I recently joined them, and hopefully I'll able to do and give my best in the field as well. So as we start, I would like to introduce our special educators. We start with the Shogun Narula. He's from Punjab and beautiful, awesome person. Yeah, she'll be our moderator. Yes, she'll be moderating all of us today. And she has done her master's in psychology from Montfort College, Bangalore. And she is interested in the field of education. And she's currently working in a school, and also she's trained professionally dealing with and teaching children life skills. And she also uses her creative skills and knowledge to make learning easy and filled with a lot of fun for the children. And I hope Sagan is doing awesome in her field, as I know her in person. She's an awesome human being. Shagun, you're most welcome and be our moderator for this evening. Welcome, Shagun.
Thank you.
Yes. I would like to introduce our panelists. I would start with Merlin D'Souza. She's from Goa. She's joining us from Goa, right, Merlin? Yes. Hi, Merlin. Yeah. So she's working as a facilitator and counselor in the learning center in Goa itself. And she has worked for 6+ years in the field of education. And as a child psychologist, she has also worked with special children with special need and like autism. She has worked with them as well. And her area of interest has been to study the role of play, art, and music and its contribution to the holistic child development. So, welcome, Marlene. Hope to
Thank you.
see
Thank
you.
you very
Yeah, in the
much.
discussion. Yes. And another panelist, we have got another beautiful person, Apurva. Apurva Saram, we have got, and she's joining us from Chennai. See the world. You see, I'm from Northeast, he's from Chennai, Sagun is in Punjab. We'll see few more coming up. Yes, Apurva, most welcome. Welcome
Thank
to the
you. Thank you so
session.
much.
Yes, and Apurva is working as a cognitive trainer and behavior therapist, and she has completed her master's in psychology, and she is fascinated by the unique way in which the children with a special need perceives the world, and she um, uh, works as a medium of making a difference in their life. Yeah, welcome, Apurva.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
we have another beautiful person with us. That is Ruya D'Souza. She's joining us from US. As Ria told us some time back before we come live, it's 7:30 a.m. for her, and she's right with us. Yes, Ria, most welcome, and nice to see you. Yes, I. She's working as a therapist in Hope, the Early Intervention Center in US, and she is currently pursuing a graduate certificate for applied behavioral analysis. And she works with children with developmental disabilities. And apart from her love for working with children, she also loves animals and music. You're welcome, Ria. You're most welcome. And with all these, Shagun, hi. And I request Shagun to take up this panel for the discussion and be our moderator for this evening. It's over to you, Shagun.
Thank you for such warm and nice words, Queen. It's really comforting to, reunite, especially after we've all seen such a tough time. I think every word of comfort seems like a long due hug, and I extend a very, very warm welcome to all of you. You all are pride of Montfort, and we're looking forward to having a very, very fruitful discussion with all of you. Um, like Queen said, without further delay, we'll just get into the questions now. We can go in any order. There's no set order for how we answer the questions. And my first and foremost question to you would be, how has your journey been? So, say you went to college, and post college, how did you decide this is the field you want to go to? And what all did you have to pick up on the way? What all did you have to leave on the way to, really get into the field and also sustain yourself there? So, how has your journey been? Any
Do we
of you?
start in any order?
Yes, yes, any of you can take it up.
You're on mute, Ria.
I said, I guess, sorry. I said, I guess I can start. It's definitely been a long journey. And like we had discussed before, I honestly wish that we had something like this too, because um, I really had to like find my way to figure out what I want to do. Because psychology is such a broad field. There's so much you can do. The age range, it's just so much. So when Marlene and I are cousins, and so when we were in our undergrad, one of our summer holidays, I think one of our vacations, we went and we interned at this place called Hope, the Early Intervention Center. They'd actually come to my college in Bangalore. I was in Jyotinavas. And they had said that, this is a place where you can work with children. And I was like, oh, I like children. Marlene likes children. Let's go. So We went there, and that's when we were like, both of us are, what it is to work with children with autism, specifically early intervention. And I was like, oh my gosh, my mind was blown. I'm like, oh my goodness, like there's so much you can do. Like we were there for like 3 weeks, I think, and we saw the difference in just 3 weeks with intervention. And I was like, I want to do this. I just felt like this is what I want to do with my life. And I went to the owner of the establishment and I said, hey, like, what can I do like to work here? And she said, you have to get a master's degree. And she had recommended Christ College in Montfort. And then I went ahead and we entered Montfort, and you were like, wow, I hope we get into this place. And you only take a few people, so I really hope we get into it. And I remember when I got that call, I was texting Molly, and I'm like, so
Yeah.
what happened? And she's like, I got into, and we were so excited because she was in Bangalore at that time, and I was in Bangalore. So it was like a really great experience, and everyone in Montfort was like super encouraging. And then we did a couple of different internships too, just to be aware of like what's available. Like, if maybe if I wanted to work like in a hospital with an older population, but that wasn't really a fit for me. So after Montfort, I went ahead and I continued working at Hope for about 2.5 years. And then I suddenly felt like I worked specifically with autism, and I felt like there were some behaviors that we use a play-based therapy in Hope, and I really love that because you follow the child and you kind of like, it's very close to like you're hitting on that that regular typical development. You're working through on their milestones. You're trying to help them catch up on those milestones, and rather like teach them like replacement behaviors, how they could manage and manage every day-to-day life and just pick on and other learning skills. But then after a point, I reached a roadblock because I felt like, okay, there are children with, autism is a spectrum. You can be low functioning to high functioning. And then there were some children who were really young and who had these really difficult behaviors and who were nonverbal. And I felt like I want to do something more. I can't find the resources to do it. I look at stuff online. It just is enough. I need to work with people who work specifically with this population. So I looked up courses around, and it looked like, and I was really averse to ABA, which is applied behavior analysis. It's a different type of therapy that we use. And for me, I was like, I had this really different understanding of it, only because I think some of the clients who came into to our center, they I think the ABA wasn't implemented right. So they came in with lots of these rigidities, and they were really anxious, and spend a lot of time getting them out of it. They were very dependent on instructions, and it just wasn't natural. And they looked really like stressed. And I was like, this is something I don't want to do. I don't want to learn this. I want to learn a different kind of therapy. I just went on the internet and I looked up courses, and I found one course that was offering a scholarship. So I was like, I'll do this. And it said Masters in Early Intervention with Autism. And I'm thinking, yeah, early intervention is what I'm doing. I'll do it. I'll do a master's in early intervention, and I'll learn how to work with children with autism through that. I thought it was a thing. So finally I moved here, and then I realized like I know how to do all of this. Early intervention in the US is from birth to 3 years. It's not really a therapy, but it's more like a service that you give for these children. And then that's when I just got into research during those 2 years, because I realized like, okay, I can't work because I'm an international student. Let me just learn more about it. And during the time I interned, and then in a place where they were offering ABA therapy, and my mind was blown. I'm like, oh, they do have play-based therapy in ABA. ABA itself has different types of therapy. There's like a whole different like in ABA you have your structured, and I was like, this is so beautifully organized. Like children who have those deficits, like who need structure and who need a different way in which teaching is implemented, they have that. And then there are also children with higher skills who really like benefit from play. They have that too. And there's like all this like, and we were like, initially I was opposed to like getting in data and graphing, but I started to see why that data was important. I started to see like making sure those foundational skills are strong. So then I was like, then I said, you know what? I think this is what I need to do. And I felt like those 2 years at masters I came in to do was just pointless. I honestly wish like someone had told me. And if anybody else, I would say, wants to take up ABA, honestly, if you have your masters in Montfort, all you have to do is get the extra credits, which is what I'm doing right now. It just takes about a year. I'm finishing up on those credits. It's a graduate certificate course that I'm doing online, and I'm working with a supervisor here in my workplace. I work in a company called ABA Consulting Services in St. Louis, and it's been great because I'm getting this ongoing support, and I've been learning. It's been a great learning. I am grateful to where I am right now. I know it was a longer journey, but I honestly wish someone had told me, because I would have been at the place where I'm at 2 years ago as opposed to now. But it's still, it's been good, and I can see like how if you are learn at an accredited center, like if you are at a place where people know how to provide ABA services, I would strongly suggest that if you want to work with children in that population, I would say you have to do a little bit more research to make sure, like go to the place, see if it's a right fit, and then maybe and see if they provide that supervision, and go ahead and do that. I would say like go for your training in basically in ABA. Although I have to say, at Hope where I worked, they're doing a phenomenal job. Like if I was still in Bangalore, I would still be working there because there's so much that I've picked up from there that I still use in with the clients that I work with right now, that people don't really know too much over here. So I feel like it's been such an enriching experience. Like in the future, I would want to do research with more play-based therapy along with ABA, along with principles of ABA, because ABA works a lot on like replacement behaviors, which is, and working on um, those difficult behaviors in a more appropriate way. And I feel like that was something that was lacking, and it's been really helpful. So that's about it for me.
Looks like a long yet very fruitful journey for you. There's a lot of learning that has come to you on this journey, and I especially like how self-aware you have become, and now you exactly know what you want to do and what is a complete no-no for you. And that cheers to that. Uh, we could, Marlene, maybe you could go next, and then we can have a few.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, it's a natural next because Ria has already covered the first half for me because we had a very similar start. But yeah, this question is very interesting because it could be a very long one or a short one. And since you have follow-up questions, I'll keep it short. But yeah, my path started off very similar to Ria's. I think both of us had the calling to work with children before we started our masters, which then led to our masters. But afterward, my path was not so streamlined. I think I took the more wayward, hey, but let's try this and let's try that, which I'm sure a lot of people are also doing because there's so much. And again, like Ria said, I'm so grateful that this platform exists because there's just so much happening in the world of mental health and child development that yeah, I think we did the trial and error. We just put our feet in different places, and then we hoped that we'd find our way along the way. And that's the path that I took. I think after I graduated from Montfort, I was in a very anxious space, like I'm sure many of you were as well, because you're getting a lot of mixed feedback from everybody. They're saying it's really hard, you're not going to get any jobs, you got to do your PhD, MPhil, and it can just seem very overwhelming. So I decided to just stop and do nothing. And in that space of nothing, I got offered a position in a school in Bangalore where they required a special educator. And my supervisor at the time told me, you should take up that job. And I said, why? I'm not a special educator. I don't even know what a special educator is. I've done my master's in clinical psychology, therefore I need to do something like this. But honestly, I was anxious enough and young enough and curious enough to just say, you know what, let's just give it a shot. So that's exactly what I did. I took up the job in the school, and having worked in intervention or observed in intervention, I think what was amazing was the very first task that I was assigned to was to be a shadow teacher for a child on the spectrum. And I'd only seen children on the spectrum through the lens of intervention therapy. Now in the space of education, seeing what their lives look like from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock was such a different experience altogether. And just understanding how important it was to be just as skilled to support children with diverse needs in an education setting was something that became very evident to me only because I took up that job. And I think if I didn't, I would have gone through a very different space. So to answer your question in a nutshell, I think all of my steps in life have been like that. I've just put one step in front of the other. And the beautiful thing about this field is that everyone is very supportive. Everyone's always looking out for each other. So every step I've taken, there's always been someone to come and say, hey, you should try this next. So my natural next step after that was to get myself trained in special ed, because you're graduated with your clinical psychology degree and you just feel like you're in the middle of the ocean and you don't know anything about what you're doing. But yeah, I did my special ed training at Hope itself, where Ria worked. They had a certificate training in children with special needs. And I think I'm really glad I took that, because they're one of the few spaces that exist in the country that are able to understand the actual diversity of the concept of special needs. They're able to understand autism, discern from autism to mental retardation to to specific learning disabilities, and they train you in a very holistic way. So I was very grateful for that training, which allowed me to do my job well. After which, the next step that came up is, okay, but there are these international schools that offer special needs and resources, but what about schools that don't? I got offered a position in Mangalore to set up a remediation and counseling center over here for a school that did not have even an inkling of an idea of what is special needs. And that was just a whole other ball game altogether. It was extremely challenging, because then I had
curious, something new, let me just go figure out what it is, actually ended up being like the first mark of what I would possibly be doing for the longest part of my life, I guess. So after that, I went on to Montfort and I took up, MSc Psychology under Bangalore University. And at that point in time, see, research had always been of extreme importance and interest to me. I've always been curious with it. So what ended up happening is that I honestly must say that I was lucky in one way, that I had very, very good role models to look up to, and who were guiding me at different points in time. So I had stumbled upon something called theory of mind. So it's part of social cognition, and so it goes back into executive function and language development and perspective taking, shared experiences, all of that for children. So I actually, I'm so glad that my supervisor at Montfort supported me to take that up, and he developed a tiny experiment, and I got to do that as my master's thesis. So ever since that school, which I worked with, which was grassroots, every step of the way has always been like I just had to take a leap of faith, and everything else kind of followed. So I'm like very lucky and grateful for that. So once I completed my masters at Montfort, I came back to Chennai because one of the owners of the school was also a founder director. Is also the founder director of a center that I work over here with. It's called Direct. So it's actually holistic therapeutic approach center. We initially started off as working predominantly with children, but now we've also expanded into working with adults. And I joined over here in 2017. So I think I was also, what really is important over here is for me to tell a little bit about how the center functions. So the supervisor of mine, who's also the founder director of the center, she actually completed her education, work experience, everything in the US, and was there almost for 10-15 years. And that's after which she came down to India and started the center. So she had a very clear idea of how everything needed to run. So each one of us at the center have to go through 150 hours of training, with before which nothing is really solidified. So the 150 hours doesn't just include observership and reading and going through research articles and discussing that with the supervisors over there, but it also makes you have to learn there's something called single subject research designs that's usually utilized for developing intervention programs and testing their credibility with children, especially with belonging to the autism population. So I learned a lot about that, and each one of us had to develop our own intervention program learn how to do it, and only after that period is done is when you get to know whether you got the job or not. And as much as it was exciting and all of that, was also quite nervous for me. But honestly, I think those 150 hours have been the major foundation for me to be who I am today and the kind of work that I do right now. So the journey has been very, very beautiful, sometimes even hectic. But what I'm trying to say over here is that I do remember discussing with my college mates when we were all fresh out of college and discussing what to do and how to do things, and a lot of us were feeling, clueless and things like that. I think I had very good systems put in place which I had to learn from and follow. And ever since then, it's always been about reading, understanding. So we have this beautiful system at work where every once a week we, pick out topics, and we each go and collect research articles, and we read up, and we have a huge discussion, not on what the research article says, but trying to apply that to each of the children we are working with. And that was very nice for us to do, because otherwise it's like, you finish your theories at college, and when you come out, you have to really, it's like you've just been thrown into a swimming pool, and you have to figure out a way to stay up, or make sure that you somehow come back to the ground. So it wasn't that way for me, or at least I had a lot of support while I was doing that. And over time, I realized that my area of interest predominantly became social cognition. So the master's thesis started becoming something that I constantly kept chasing. And I was also given children who required that kind of training. So I went into trying to understand a little bit more about executive function training, learning about theory of mind and perspective taking and shared experiences, all of that, and in my own way, along with the help of my supervisor, putting stuff up together. So our center, we don't just believe in doing the interventions or just the therapeutic work that we do for the children. We also have a strong inclination towards research. So a few research articles after developing successful interventions on reducing theory of mind deficit among children with autism. So it's been more like going predominantly into social cognition right now for me. So that's something that I'm chasing right now. So this is basically a little bit about me and my journey.
Great. Looks like a lot of you had to. I mean, you're also referring to a lot of people who have been involved in your journey, first hand or second hand, and looks like this field did need a lot of support from other people in order for you to be sure that this is what you want to do. So you had to do a lot of other things to make sure, okay, yeah, like this is what I'm interested in, and that's how you figured it out. And what I really like, it just stands out for me is that the field requires you to be a lot of have a lot of self awareness, but also understand that uh, there may be new things coming up each day, so you'll have to take it with an open mind. So that is something that is that I see in a very very few number of people, the openness to really accept what comes. And it really stands out for me in this discussion while I talk to all of you. Having said that, when we're talking about the skills that you're supposed to have, or like what is that you would say is a good practice, or if there are certain set of skills that you would recommend for the people who want to take up this field to have something, you could think of this way, that if you have a certain kind of skill set, I think you do well in this field. So something that you would recommend to do. uh, if some of it can also be something that you can acquire, not necessarily does it need to be something that you're supposed to be born with, but like generally what they can pick up on the way, and they should, especially for those who are just completing their masters now and would want to come to the field. What is that thing that you would say they should have in them to really be in the field and sustain themselves in the field? Yes, Purva.
Okay, because I just have a few thoughts, so I didn't want to lose them. So a little bit that I would like to tell over here is that what I do is not special education per se, but cognitive training and behavior therapy is basically something that I was trained to do. So we try and identify specific cognitive deficits and strengths that a child has through various assessments. Those are not standardized assessments, but live assessments that we do with anything that we have in our environment, and try to understand and identify what or where the issues may be, or where the child may be lagging. And we try and come up with intervention protocols to keep strengthening at least the, utilizing the localization theory and things like that, to keep strengthening the neural pathways that are surrounding the areas that may not be receiving enough oxygen, or whatever the situation may be, because of which they are having certain deficits that they are experiencing. And that in turn also requires a lot of behavioral input and training. And I think what Ria pointed out about ABA as well, honestly, I've not really done an ABA program, but my supervisor is an ABA specialist, and she also identified, she would share a lot of views very similar to you, but since she has like a myriad of other training experiences, she's given us like the best of methods that we could pick up from. So a little bit of the ABA aspect, but a lot of the humanistic aspect as well involved. Trying to look at things more creatively has been one of the things for us in the work that we do. So from my experience, what I would say is that if you are somebody who's been inclined towards cognitive psychology as a student, or you have been inclined towards biopsych, because a part of it requires you to know a little bit of cognitive neuroscience as well, because that's when you understand a little better. Because when the parents come with reports and things like that, you get to learn a lot more than you would have, or your program would have covered. So subject wise and things like that, that is one of the things that it would be looked at. But nevertheless, that's also what the training is for, because it's not like everybody who came into the center came purely from a applied psych background. A lot of the people came from a counseling psychology background, who didn't really have cognitive psych in their master's program. So I mean, these are usually the subjects that we touch upon. But I think one of some of the skills that have really helped me out in the process is that openness to learning, understanding that no matter what, every single day you step into the therapy room, you are learning as much from the child as much as the child is learning from you, has been extremely helpful to know. And I think one of the things that I really enjoy about my work is that it's really helped me be me with the kids that I work with. And like there is like there's this magic that happens in the therapy room when we are together, and both of us are equally responsible for that magic to happen. And yeah, so one of the things is adaptability as well, because just like I'm assuming it is to work with adults as well, with children, there is also a lot of times where you cannot really predict a session. You can really go with a lot of planning and prepping all that you can, but you also have to be open to the fact that that day might just not be the way you thought. For example, especially with nonverbal children who come in frustrated, like it takes an entire session or probably even a day to actually get to the fact of the matter, or get to the to identify what might have actually set it off for them. Why is the child frustrated? So in that point in time, to be able to understand where to pitch in and where to kind of take a back seat and give the child a little bit of the time they require, all of those kind of things are definitely important. And one of the biggest things that I would say is that the internship places that you choose, try and get more information about it prior hand. Talk to people who have already interned in that place to get to know what kind of work that they do as well. Because a lot of us, at least back in my time, I do remember that there are these places where there are absolutely good internships. Like I have also interned with Hope, but I've also interned with other organizations to know the difference. And you wouldn't know the difference unless you've been to both places to understand how things are being done. And especially in a country like India, where the field is just beginning to bloom right now, and with the soar in number of cases, and the people wanting to seek mental health treatment during COVID and post COVID, I think it's very important that even colleges and our role models, all of them, actually educate us on how to identify that difference. Because a lot of valuable time is what you get during your college years, and you may not really get that when you start working, because of the hours and the different responsibilities that you share. So these are some of the things that I picked up during the thing. And also always be open to learning, because it's never ending, and you will always love it more when you keep putting more effort in trying to understand what's going on and what's out there, whether it's research or some other fellow therapist is talking about things, identify different intervention protocols that are going on, how you can modify and utilize that for your child, all of that. Basically, that's what it is.
Great. I think that was that was a response based on a lot of self-reflection. So looks like that you do keep in touch with your own self while looking at yourself with the lens of who I am growing into as a professional. Thank you for your inputs, Apurva. Could we have one of you also speak, Ria or Marlene?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Apurva really put it across quite beautifully. It was the essence of what my reflections on the field were as well. Well, even though I'm not in a position of special educator specifically right now, what I do is more looking at the social and emotional development of all the children in the center that I work with. Special education is still something that I touch upon. I have been a special educator in the past, so I can talk a little bit about the skills that are required. But when I say skills, just reflecting back on what Apurva said and what Shogun said, you can look at it in two ways, because there's your practical and theoretical skills that are required, and then there's your mindset. Because at the end of the day, neither can exist without the other. You need to somehow be able to integrate the both of them. When it comes to applying for a job as a special educator in any school, international, public, you need to have obviously a master's in either an education degree or a psychology degree. And of course, schools, the Board of Education would recommend that you have a master's degree in specific learning disabilities or a master's in special ed. Here, it's my experience personally, I haven't done too much research on it, but it's my experience that these courses, these masters in special ed, don't always cover the nuances of special ed. And what I mean by that is, in my work experience, I found that children on the spectrum, children with autism, children with mental retardation, and children with specific learning disabilities were clubbed into one category called special needs. Now, that is easy when it comes to a big school for administrative purposes to work with. But for you as a special educator to understand that it's actually the practical skill set that you're going to be using to deal with these three different groups of children are very, very different. To start with, children with autism don't necessarily come under the category of special needs because they have average to above average intelligence. So the skills you're using in when it comes to specific learning disability or special retardation do not apply to children on the spectrum. Whereas social support and the communicative support that you require for children on the spectrum is more classroom specific. It's something that needs to be integrated in the classroom. One thing to watch out when you are looking for your master's in special ed is to understand whether the course you're applying for covers autism spectrum disorder in your master's or not. Do not assume that a master's in special ed is also a training in working with children with autism. My personal experience is that it's two completely different things. If you're taking up a where you are going to be working with children with autism and you have a background in special ed, make sure you get yourself trained separately to work with children on the spectrum. There are a lot of intervention centers like Hope and others that offer that. And then, of course, if you know you're going to be working only with children with SE, that is specific learning disabilities, then you can take that specific master's. You have a 1-year diploma. Now, schools will insist, of course, that you have it. I did not get myself trained in, I did not do a separate master's in specific learning disabilities. I did the course that Hope was offering, which combined training in everything. But here is where I would ask you to use your mindset and discernment, because especially in our country, when it comes to getting yourself certified, one has to discern between certification and quality training. Most of what we consider as certified institutes in India will give you your certificate and you will be able to apply for your job. But in order for you to ensure that you are trained well, that you are on top of your field, I would go back to what Apurva said. You have to commit to training yourself on a day-to-day basis, on a case-by-case basis, reading up, doing your own research, and understanding the nuances of the field. Definitely get yourself certified. I think having a basic special ed degree is required today, but don't let that degree be an overall blanket of that this is it, now I can work with different populations, because children with special needs are absolutely diverse. There are no two children who have the similar learning outcome. So in order for you to be prepared to deal with that, you have to keep yourself updated, and you have to be constantly ready to learn. And the last thing I would say about mindset, to in order to support your practical skills, is that this is also something that both of you touched upon, is your openness to learn, your willingness to understand that no every day looks different. You can work and make progress with a child, and it'll be absolutely wonderful for a month, and then the child will regress back, and it can be a very disheartening process. I think that after 7 years, I still sometimes on a difficult day will ask myself, did I make the right choice? Is this the right field for me? Because it's very difficult when it comes to children. But to understand that that's part of it. There are days that are going to be excellent, and probably months, and then one simple trigger could set you back by a long, long time, and that can really wear you out. It's important at that time to remind yourself why you've chosen this vocation, I would call it, rather than a job. And keep yourself open to learn at the time. Learn from the child, especially.
Great. I think it was necessary that we set the message out there that having a disorder such as ASD or like others of the kind is different from what you would see when you talk about special education as such. So it was very important for us to also let the viewers know that we are also kind of letting you know that it's not just on paper, it's practically also impossible for you to club the two since they are so different in the nature itself. So thank you for that, Marlene and Ria.
For me, what's always been important is to put the child first. I too don't necessarily work as a special educator. I work as a therapist. I've never really worked in a school setup. I've done a lot of one-on-one therapy, and I've worked with done some group therapy. Um, one of the leading things that even got me to here was up till here, and even till today, like Apurva and Marlene pointed out, that you have to be completely open to learning from anyone. It can even be like I train new hires in my company. Like I teach them the basics of like pretty much what my job entails, which is again like play-based therapy, as well as like we have a more structured therapy using principles of ABA. So, and people who come in, a lot of them may not even have like, a lot of them have a background in like maybe they have some experience working with children. And then I always ask them like, why do you want to do this? And I honestly feel like some of the people who have told me like, no, we really want to make a difference. Like we want to do something to be able to, make a difference in the lives of children. And, it starts with children because again, in our center, we work with children from birth to the age of 21. And a lot of the people who come in, they say, we really want to make a difference. And honestly, that was a feeling that well, I know Marlene and I, we discuss, like whenever we talk, we always go back and talk about work because we've been so passionate about this field. And we'll always talk about, hey, what do you think? Like, how can we best, help this? She might talk about a client, and I might tell her about what's going on, in my life. And then with the children that I were working with. And, we'll always have someone to discuss what was going on with the clients you're working with. And a big thing was I would highly recommend people to do, like Apurva had mentioned, would be volunteer, intern, go to different places, see what they have to offer before you decide what it is that you really want to do. And that's something that I did. I was also open to, like I said, okay, Hope, I interned, when I was an undergrad, I looked at Hope and I said, wow, I really like this place. I like what they're doing. I also tried interning in other places as well. and I just suddenly, and like hope seemed to be like they had also a holistic view on therapy, and I was like, this, like they're really trying to better help the child. Like everything is focused on the child, not so much on okay, how much progress can, how much time do we need to take to get this progress, but rather like, okay, what is helping and benefiting the child. um and I think if you have that basic like want to, want to work with children, first of all you must want to work with children, with people. If you want to work that is specifically with children, basically that you should enjoy working with children. You need to have patience, and patience comes, I think, very naturally when you enjoy working with children, because that's a big factor. And then along with that, you need to be curious. You need to be curious to see what will best fit you, because we're all different people. And yes, in the US they keep focusing on ABA because it is research driven and insurance covers it. But honestly, for me, I've been taking it as a full learning experience. Yes, I see big pockets of ABA that I can apply with the therapy, with all the knowledge that I've got from Bangalore. And it's something pretty much like Apurva, you were saying with your supervisor. It's something that would want to do in the future too. Like I would want to pick up bits and pieces from areas in which I know, like, have from my own experiences and from research have helped clients, and I would want to add on like things from, like, I really still believe that play is a very like integral part in terms of a child's development, because from birth to 5 is when you're then this is the highest amount of brain development. And I feel like play is the most natural way in which a person can learn. You can pick up on all your domains, all those skills of cognition, fine motor, gross motor, social emotional, all of those pieces can be picked up on. So I'm just going to hop off what both of you said. Just be open to learning, um, want to work with children, um, talk to different people, network, um, try. You have to have that first-hand experience. So volunteer on different places. When you're in college right now, you have that free time. Pretty much what Apurva said. Go and see what different places have to offer. And more than anything, another thing that Apurva talked about was making sure you are that her center also talked about was making sure that all of the people who are working there are properly trained, because consciously, and Mani's done the same, because you have to consciously, you have to be accountable. Like you have to feel like, okay, I can't just go and work with this child without knowing what I should be doing. So go out there, if you feel like, okay, I need to get that training, because in India, especially like another thing that I would also struggle was, okay, like I trusted the center that I worked at because everyone there was so dedicated, so motivated, and I felt like, yeah. And we had a 6 month training there as well in order to first start working. And I felt like, okay, that gives me a basis. And then a year after that, I would still get supervision, like ongoing supervision from my supervisor. And I felt like, okay, now I feel like ready to go out there and work. And I would always go back and forth with the supervisor. So just remember, be accountable for the amount of training that you have before you go out and say like, hey, I can help you. And be honest, honest and open with the people that you're working with. Say, hey, this is how much I know, I will get back to you. And just honestly, like, just be true to what you're doing is what I would tell people. Put ego aside, just go and like Apurva and Malin was saying, be open to learning, be open to meeting with new people. And yeah, that's pretty much, I would say, what I've been doing, and I would honestly recommend other people to do. Just make sure you are qualified in the area and you're willing to learn.
Yes.
Yeah, I think both Marlene and Ria put it beautifully, but I think there were two other things that stood out for me very distinctly, even from my personal experience. One of it is that when you're working with a child, you are actually not just working with a child, you are working with all sorts of stakeholders involved: the school, the teachers, the parents, extended family who's supposed to be the guardian for the child. And you don't just deal with the child, you have to answer to everybody, you have to make them understand. And at least in the 4.5 years that I have spent, during the pandemic, my center, we made a decision to try out, setting up sessions virtually. And as much as a lot of the people were nervous, I was actually very curious to know how this whole thing is going to happen. So during my time virtually taking sessions for the children that I worked with, I also had a parent. I was actually also training the parent, and I think something like that should always be focus, because there's no point in us seeing a child twice a week or thrice a week, and if the child just shows whatever results that is coming out of therapy within our center, but because then the parent also complains, but it's working with you, but I don't see it at home. It's because of the fact that there's a lot of things that go in, like the amount of patience that we exhibit, like how Ria mentioned, and level of creativity that we show. We give them unconditional acceptance in that process, like whatever it is, you have that space and I will guide you through it, and we'll guide each other through it together. And I think that was an important realization for me that I thought that I should share. In fact, my future study is going to be in that area to try and see how therapeutic diets work, if we can train parents and children together and see how that works, because that's very interesting. Because if the parents learn to give, it's not commands per se, but use the right words that help the child understand what they want, or what's required, and also at the same time strengthen the way the child is able to communicate. I think it'll be one step closer to inclusion as we speak, or true inclusion as we speak. And that also means that we also have to keep ourselves updated with the law of the country, or the regional area that you are with, because children are involved. And the center that I work with, it's not just the children who are with special needs or come with a diagnosis, but we also have neurotypical children who have issues, more with respect to socio emotional issues, behavioral issues, coming with slight conduct disorder related symptoms, or you just see things like that. So all of that has really taught me that you need to do all of this. And one more thing is that creativity, like most of us over here, some of us are good with music, some of us are good with dance and things like that, and bringing in that creativity really helps. Like, just a short example, I worked with one child of mine who was in at that point in time in her 7th standard and had specific learning disorder. She came under the specific learning disorder category, and she had extreme difficulty with maths, so with this dyscalculia. So what we ended up doing is for her to be able to understand mathematical equations, like simple addition and subtraction was such a difficulty, but she was good with playing the veena. So I took the 7 swarams in the musical this thing, and I just gave each swaram a code, numbers from 1 to 7, and I created this thing where I put numbers together and created a scale with the swarams. So all she had to do was identify the answer to that particular question by going and identifying on that ruler which swaram comes, and then she actually gets to create a nice musical pattern out of it. So you can actually be very creative with the things that you have, and that's what this field demands, especially when you're working with children, because I think they come with their own parts of themselves, and if you are open enough to show your parts as well, I think that's what makes therapy very, very fruitful. And again, yeah, so these are the things that I thought we should have.
Perfect, perfect. Uh, Again, what stands out is that, uh, like you said, the mindset to be open, to be honest, and you also pointed out integrity, right? Like a lot of us have to be very, very integral, and I think that goes on for the field of psychology in general, because even when we are talking about the people who are supposed to be normal, uh, they still, like, every day looks very different with them, because, and again, like, every case is so different, even though there are similar patterns, there are similar people. However, the what you do in that cabin of yours is very, very different each day. So having an open mindset goes a long way, definitely, and I can resonate to it on every level. uh, so most of the things that I wanted to ask have been covered. I'll give you one final prompt, and we would see how this discussion goes from there. From what I understand of the field, and since I used to also volunteer for somebody who was especially a special educator, so they were trained and they owned a center of their own. And uh, I think what stands out and what is really sad about this thing is that the stigma that is attached to it is like so stark and so out there that sometimes, as a person, I used to take it very, very personally. So if somebody is making a comment, of course we were immature back then, but anytime anybody would say that, oh, you work with them, all right. And it used to take a personal toll on me as well. So just wanted to check in if that happens, and if that does, how do you navigate yourself through that? If there are any challenges, any other challenges except this that you have found on the way, and what was your topmost strategy to deal with that? Because it looks like the field has a lot of challenges, requires you to have a lot of patience, so it's only natural to also lose your cool at times. So how do you manage to pick yourself up?
Um, for me, it's just educate the person. For me, I just think like, okay, you probably don't know. So I mean, there's only so much I can say. I try my best not to take it personally, because for me, I'm like, it's something that I have experiences in, and yes, this is something that another thing that we need to start advocating for, and I know it's already happening, so we need to continue to advocate for this population especially. And yeah, and then that's pretty much what I would do, because it's not like I know everything in this world anyway. So I'll just say, well, I'll politely say, yes, this is the population I deal with. What do you know about autism? And then I'll explain what autism means. And then I'd be like, this is what I do. Sometimes if it's just, if I feel like the person's just not open to like listening, I'll just, nod my head and just walk away, because it's just not worth it. But for the most part, I would say educate the person. That's all you can do. That's what you should do. And that is how we'd have a more inclusive world.
Yeah, I would support and add to that as well, because what Ria said previously as well. In this field specifically, there is no space for ego. In the field of special ed or working with children with disabilities, with diverse needs, and even if you're talking about social stigma from the very first day, when, especially in a country like India, when you have chosen to study psychology, you have started to take on the burden of stigma right there and then from all the uncles and aunties who don't get it. And that's the beautiful thing, I think, when you're passionate about what you do, and when you really care about it, when there's empathy and compassion involved in your work, and the focus of your work is to channel that empathy and compassion, people get to see it. um, for me specifically, because I worked as a special educator for a few years, coming back to a small town, explaining to people what I do, and their idea of special education as it is extremely stigmatized by a very limited outlook of all people clubbed into this very dreary space and calling it a special school and all of that, like, oh, okay. But that's the wonderful thing, is that when you recognize people fear what they don't know, going back to what Ria said, education is the only way to fix that. My tool of solving that problem is that I love to tell stories. And as a storyteller, I think I would just come back from work day in and day out, and Ria would know this because she'd be at the other end of it. Just talk about what I do as a curious story, like, oh my God, did you know that this child, he did this? It was so funny. And I think when people get to see how much you enjoy what you do, slowly they start to also learn. I think it's important to also bring out that compassion in them, because that adds on to what Ria said about advocacy. At the end of the day, we also need to be a voice for a field that is struggling to be heard a little more. And the only way you can do that is by, first of all, feeling joyful about it yourself, and not being afraid to talk about it, not being afraid to speak joyfully about it to the people that you work with and live with and share space with.
Perfect. Yeah, I think we all needed to hear that. And I specifically wanted to know your thoughts on this, because I do know a lot of my students as well who want to take this up, but then are too afraid. Even like, they're stressed on behalf of their future. Like, they're already stressed about, what all they will have to deal with, what all comments. So I'm pretty sure they'll have a broader outlook now. And of course, a lot of it also comes with age and experience. And I would want people to not restrict themselves just because there's a fear out there, and which is more or less irrational in the long run. You come to realize that, oh, it was nothing. It really is not that worth it. Yeah. Apurva.
Yeah, sorry guys, I think I have a power cut, so I'll just be on audio till I get the connection back. So, my experience, to be honest, with the general people who have nothing to do with the work that I do has not been where I had to like fight or argue my case of what I do and how I do it. But I think for me, I think this is also something that future psychologists who are looking to get into the realm of working with children must know is that you might face situations like that with the parents that you work with directly, in the sense that I've seen so many families where just a single parent is so taking up the entire burden of working with that particular child, and I mean just being there, supporting them and believing them, while the rest of the family has such heavy stigma, and the mother or the father, whoever is the one who's supporting that point in time, has to face so much, to be honest, wrath. I don't know what other word to use over here, because that's the kind of stories you hear, right? Like it takes a toll on all of them, and to be aware of that and to be supportive and be there for them. I remember so many times where I give them, the parent who's just breaking down in front of me, give them that time and space and be there for them and give them that assurance, because they realize that what they see in their child, at least within the family, even if the rest of the family isn't seeing it just yet, I am seeing it, or my fellow therapists are seeing it. And I think that's the motivation and support that they get. And I think at the end of the day, you also go back feeling a little happy about the fact that in one way or another you supported them. And one of the other things that I always face is that, especially with parents who realize that their child required or does require help a little later in the child's life, like maybe post 6 7 years old, is that they come and ask me, ma'am, your thing is working really well, I don't know what you're doing, but how long does the child require therapy? Do you think my child will become normal? So there's this one thing that Shrita, in one of Shrita's classes, I remember having this discussion, and I took that line with me, and I keep using that a lot. Like, but then again, who said what's normal? I think it's just a bunch of us who seem to be able to do similar things. We have just, I don't know, we have just self-proclaimed and created this term as normal, and we are just going on using it and telling everybody else, oh, if you don't meet these criteria, then you're not. But it is true that whatever it is, yes, there are deficits, and everybody does have to an extent. But the only thing is that what we need to understand is that at the end of the day, that's their way of life, and what needs to be done is to help them integrate. And I truly believe that just spreading awareness and advocacy is not the entire thing, it's one part of it, but also training these children to try a little bit to understand how the world works. And I mean, real coexistence or true inclusion happens only when you work with both groups, not just with the general public going on saying, oh, accept them, oh, understand them, oh, give them the opportunities, but also training this group to be able to face whatever it is that comes their way, because they are extremely smart. What's difficult is that the rest of the world sees only the deficits, but behind all of those, there are closed doors of potential that nobody really knows yet. It's just waiting to be opened up. And they have avenues, and it's beautiful the way that their life is. So, all we have to do, I mean, I think I'm just very grateful that I'm one of those people who's able to be that medium in that process to get them from what the world, or at least their little world, sees them to be, to their own world accepting them, saying, hey, I think you're just perfect the way you are. I mean, I think that's the beauty of the work we do. And that's basically something that I remember, and that's the conversation I have, which has worked perfectly, because I truly believe in that. And as long as you convey what you believe in, it can have the power to make the person who's arguing with you also to believe after a point in time. And whether they do or don't, I don't think it's our qualm, like how Ria mentioned. It's up to them. As long as the people who are directly involved understand the process and are giving that child that chance, that's more than enough.
Right. I think, again, we all as a team uh, are committed to challenge every stigmatized, or like when people are making statements based on stigma. We're so motivated to work with that. And we've also come to realize that it is important that we are okay here, so that we can help everybody who's around us. So at some point we learn to fight the battles, and at some point we know that it's not worth it, so I'm not even going to, argue with you. I'm just going to just walk away and say that, yeah, like, do whatever floats your boat. And it's really, really also important to um, come together as a team, like Apurva said, that the people who are directly involved need to be actually involved. It's not just knowing what is happening, it's actually also participating and staying committed to make a difference. And as a team, when you work is when you see results coming out. And in the field, I would say that it is important to also give due credit to the professional who's involved, but also to other stakeholders, because more or less their contribution also makes a difference. Doesn't matter what the proportion is, but what really matters is the outcome. And it I think there are so many things that have stood out for me, so I kept making notes. I'm going to look back at this and really help understand. So I work with a mainstream school. However, right now I've come to realize that with a lot of awareness and people being open to accepting the idea of having children with special needs has started to come in. So it's just very new for me to uh, really be in the space with them, and the school expecting from me to be there as a special educator. Of course, like, I'm trying to make them understand that no, I'm not the person, but I would get somebody to help them, is where I am. But this was a really good learning experience for me as well. And I completely resonate when you all say that it's a lot of patience that you need. Even today, I had this class where I had to, really allow a child to stand for the entire time, as opposed to everybody else who's sitting, because he does not feel like sitting at all and he feels like moving. So I had to have him as a volunteer for my class, so that his energy can be utilized, while the others do not feel that he's getting a special treatment, and why are we not getting a special treatment. And I think we still have a long way to go. And thank you for your inputs today, and I personally would want to, connect with each one of you at any point if I need help. I now know who I can turn to, definitely, and get help with where we are today. Queen, do we have you on call, and do we have questions? We'll do a quick
Yes,
check.
Sagan.
Our
Yes,
pan-
yes. There are questions from our viewers.
okay, our
Yeah,
panel is
we
okay
have
with
questions.
extending the time a
Yeah,
little.
I will.
She can
Yeah,
accommodate.
I will. Yeah, I will just put up the questions. Like, there are questions from the viewers. They have asked, how is work-life balance in this line of work? So, questions of that nature. And there is a specific question for Ria. How to be honest about what you can't do? It's like relating to if you are overworked or overwhelmed, like working with a child. When you work with a child, you get attached to them. So questions like how to be honest about what you can't do, right? So that's the question being asked by the viewers. And one more question is there. What are the challenges along this journey and how did you overcome that? And also one more question. How did your work change during the pandemic? And what have you learned from it? So I think Apurva has spoken something with regard to working during pandemic, right? And so, Ria or Marlene, would you like to add on that?
Which question are we taking first?
I think the pandemic
Yeah,
one.
we'll take this. How? Yeah, pandemic. Regarding pandemic, how did your work change during the pandemic, or what have you learned from it?
Okay, I don't have much to add with regards to the pandemic because I work in an experiential learning center, which requires us to be hands on and at the center. So during the pandemic, it was a big struggle to try to do that online. We attempted it for a short period of time, but then we went back to working in person. We took a few risks. I would say my learning from that experience was it was so absolutely beautiful to see how so many children, especially the children with special needs, had remarkable improvement by simply staying at home with their parents for a prolonged period of time, having the attention, the continuous attention of their parents, the support and that feeling of security just contributed to so many, especially children who had behavior issues, simply calmed down because they had the attention of their parents for a prolonged period of time. And that was wonderful for me to see. Yeah, but I'll let the both of you speak about the pandemic.
Um, Go ahead, Apurva. Go ahead.
So
Okay,
for
okay.
I guess
And yeah.
okay, so for us, I guess it was a mixed bag because a lot of the parents that I was working with, some of them had a lot of experience, a lot of loss in their family, in their careers, and things like that. And there was extreme uncertainty of what the future looks like, and their anxiety was passed on to the child as well, to be honest. And a lot of the children who have come with behavioral issues, and like how Ria had mentioned earlier, it kind of became one step forwards and two steps backwards with them because there was quite a bit of regression. Schools took almost 3, 4 to even 6 months to kind of try and get, I mean, especially the schools that these children go to, took about 6 months to get them on board with online, or set up an online thing for them because they had too much things, too much of time in hand. And most of the times, children on the spectrum do really well with routine, and when that routine is disrupted, everything for them gets disrupted. So nothing is really there to channelize the excess energy that's there for them. So the only way, they were like, the only respite the parents would get is that 1 or 2 hours of therapy that they have in the initial stages. So we decided that we would be creative about this entire process and involve the parents in. So for me, I enjoyed the process because I started going online and starting to look at, we use a lot of games as methods to cognitively strengthen different areas for the facets like problem solving, logical reasoning, all of those things. And there was a reservoir of things available online. So just to be able to pick those things up, find things like I think Google had this thing where Google Jamboard and things like that was made free during the pandemic for schools and things like that to use. So using those kind of resources, using pictures to help them communicate, having a Jamboard on, and both me and my child just communicating through images and typing out sentences, things like that. I think that gave a new I think opened up a new space to really be creative with the process. It didn't really stop us. Of course, there were challenges of not being physically there, but I think it really helped us be even more patient, because if you were there physically with the child, you might just be like, go closer to comfort them, of course, because it's okay to do that in that context and things like that. But you're not physically there for that child to feel it. So being able to give instructions to the parents, initially it was a bit challenging, but once they started seeing and understanding what we are doing, they started utilizing the processes even at home, and that helped them out a lot. So this was the process of how work looked like during the pandemic. And for the first 2.5 months is all we got as break. After that we started, and within 1 month, I think it was the craziest thing, because right now we are all, each therapist is working with clients even from abroad and from different cities right now. And during vacations, like, they come down to Chennai just to get in-person sessions and then go back. So month of May is like extremely busy for us, but it opened up avenues for all of us, like, for people who used to come once a year or once in 2 years for therapy to the center and go back, now have a continuous flow or way of working. And I think most of the children also enjoyed the whole technological aspect to it. So these were the challenges, but also the silver lining.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Apurva, for adding few more lines to this question. Ria, would you like to add something on that?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, I was still doing like my master's program, the one in early intervention in autism. And we were just, working on research for children specifically from the age of like from birth to 3. And I was pretty much just observing sessions via telehealth, which is like video sessions. But I joined at a point also when they were kind of moving towards when I joined my job, when they were moving towards in person, and they also had like telehealth services. And during that time, what was really cool was that I noticed one thing that we used to do in India that we didn't do over here, which I wish we would do more, is that in Bangalore when I worked at Hope, we would really stress on parent training. We would work a lot on the parent being trained because we would only see the child twice a week, and we would want them to work with their child, generalize their skills across different people, different environments. So we would really work with the parents to understand because they're their biggest teachers. They're the ones who are with them throughout the day. So I noticed that with telehealth services here, finally the parents had to proactively work with their child, and a lot of the parents have seen a whole new perspective because of it. So I think that was really cool. And also, like Apurva had mentioned, just people who in remote areas who never were able to have those services are also able to get these services. So that was a plus point of it. And of course, yeah, the regression that's happened with people with children who had behaviors, that was also definitely a challenge. But along the way, there was a lot of like parent training. So I think that was really beneficial. And I think I'll just go ahead and finish that question to being honest. That's something that I've had to work with throughout. Like every day is a learning process for me. So if there's something I don't know, I will straight away say, this is something I'm not. This is something I'll need more guidance on. Something I'm not too sure about. But I will definitely get back to you. Tell me what it is you want to know. I will talk to my supervisor. I'll talk to somebody else who would have better knowledge with this, and I will get back to you. It's important to me. It really is important to me that I am um, providing the information that they're really seeking, giving the best support that I can possibly.
Hey, say hi. Hi.
You
Okay.
have a question?
Thank you, Ria. Thank you, Ria.
Uh,
Thank you, Ria, for answering the question. I think we are already extended our time. I think so.
Oh, I
Yeah,
think,
we will.
but there was this one interesting question about work-life balance because I think that's
Yeah, yeah,
something I'm sure
yeah.
all of us will agree. It was, we are still, I know I'm still figuring it out. When nobody really talks about these things, these are things that you just like kind of, fall and figure things out. And just a few points I thought, maybe all of us should talk about because I do not know if the current curriculum also talks about these things. And I thought that that was an important question to address. What do you guys think?
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know what your points are.
Okay, so one of the things for me that worked out was that to understand and be okay with being able to identify how many hours I can do, especially if you're working in a therapeutic setup, not a school setup. I am not very sure that all schools are flexible like that, but with the therapeutic center, you can identify the times or the timings that works best for you. It's okay for about 6 months you can only see 4 or 5 clients a day versus seeing more than that. Like my center works from 11 a.m. till 7:30, but I do this thing which works best for me. And over time I've realized that for me just doing therapy doesn't work out. And I am very grateful for the center that I am in, that we also carry out research projects, other projects and things like that. So I try and bifurcate my time across these things because then I'm learning from each aspects. And also it's not getting, sometimes the therapeutic process can get a little mundane, and you have to be a little mindful about it if that's kind of getting to you. And to be able to get because then you are going according to the pace of the child, not your own pace, right? So to make sure that you find a fine balance, one, supervision is super super important. Having a support group within your colleagues set up, who help you unwind and things like that would be great. If your center can come up with uh, activities and things like that, maybe once a week or once in a month after your work is done, to just bond with each other and do everything and anything but therapeutic work. That helps identifying going back to your own hobbies or things that you used to have long ago and trying to catch or pick up from there. All of these things really help. And okay, so these are my experiences so far. I'm still figuring it out.
Good. That was
Thank you,
very
Apurva. Thank you.
experienced for someone who's still figuring it out. It was good. Yeah, I would say when it comes to work-life balance for us in our field, the picture is a little different. I think when people say work-life balance, it's always about work hours, but there's also a lot to be said about our emotional energy. And especially when it comes to working with children on the spectrum, working with children with special needs, it can be quite emotionally taxing. So managing your emotions, keeping them in check, making sure that you are, like Apurva said, undergoing supervision, or if not that, at least have an end of the day and talk to somebody. I too agree with Apurva that a big part of work life balance when it comes to this field uh, is staying inspired and staying curious. And the one way to do that is to keep in touch with your hobbies, keep in touch with the things that mean a lot to you, because that is something that will give you that emotional energy that you need to do the work that you have to do the very next day. And yeah, keep taking some time for yourself, I think, is absolutely necessary. Part of the job is getting attached, and to be aware of that attachment, to know how to is also very important. I am very shameless in my boundary setting, wherein everyone who knows me in Goa knows that for 1 hour after I come back from work, I don't talk to anybody. And I know it might be considered rude, but I spend the whole day talking from 9 to 3. So for 1 hour after work, I don't talk to people. Of course, then I would like to talk a lot to other people, but it's important to take time for yourself because it's a very emotionally taxing job.
Thank you so much, Marlene. Ria, do you have anything to add on that?
Just make sure you try to avoid burnout because you don't want to that to affect the children you're working with. So take those breaks if you need to, and get enough sleep. And yeah,
Yeah.
is all I can say.
Eat healthy food.
Try to eat healthy. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, and thank you for all your valuable words and experiences that you shared with the entire team. Shagun is there on the very outset. I would thank Shagun as a moderator. Our beloved panelists, we have Apurva, Ria, and Marlene. All of you are awesome people, amazing people that I have met after a long time, honestly speaking. And you would have seen my daughter coming in between because she is literally waiting for me. After the day's work, I have hardly given her time today. So she's coming and just warning me, Mama, it's time to come out. So I hope she has not disturbed during your discussions or talk, whatever it is. I would thank all of you, and I would also thank the entire team though, and behind this project. Those are working to make this evening a grand success, I feel. And as Shagun said during the discussion, and now we know whom to discuss with, whom to talk with, right? It's really a good time that we had, and my sincere gratitude and thanks to all of you that you have accepted the proposals that were thrown to you, and thank you so much. And next week, 14th, the week 14th, we will be meeting, and we'll have the opportunities to talk to the industrial psychologist. So hope to see you. I request the viewers to join us again in the next week also, and come forward with your beautiful questions. Thank you, viewers, for your beautiful questions, and thanks to all of you. Thank you,
Thank
and good
you.
evening.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank
thank
you
you.
so
Thank
much
you
for
very
having
much.
this
Thank
happen.
you. Yes,
You guys.
yes.
Bye. Take
And
care.
happy Bihu from
Thank you.
Assam. We are celebrating Bihu
Oh,
during
happy
this time.
Bihu to
Oh,
you.
I was wearing
Bihu.
traditional attire actually, traditional attire. So I worn
Lovely.
it especially for this day.
Nice.
Yes,
Oh,
thank you so
Beautiful.
much.
lovely. See you
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye bye.
Okay, we'll wind up the session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes.
Guys, should we start?